Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Flashback Friday. I'm George the Antique Nomad, and I am really excited to bring you this one because this is a great antique mall that has things that I have never seen in another antique facility like this. I also am happy to bring it to you because this was one of the last videos I did before I did premieres, and I had some sound quality problems, but I think I've mastered that now with these flashbacks, so I think you'll have a better experience than if you watch the original video, which of course is still in my playlist. This mall is in Boise, Idaho, and let's cut to the video so that you can see all the good stuff because it really is a fun place. It's one of my favorite stops when I'm going cross country or at least across the Northwest. Ah, yes, the old intro. Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go.
Hey everybody, it's George the Antique Nomad at the Antique Nomad on Periscope, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And I am in the 16-foot Penske traveling towards Kentucky with a big load of stuff going from the West Coast to the Midwest.
And that is a true story. I drove this thing all the way across country, and by the time I got to Kentucky, it was probably 2/3 full. It started about 1/3 full when I left Washington State. I try to do a shift of merchandise out of one region into another about twice a year because it keeps things fresh. It gives me a chance to take some of my things I've had a while to my storehouse in Kentucky where I can sell them to a different bunch of people. And it also gives me the opportunity to pick up really cool stuff as I go cross country. So I don't always rent a big truck, but this time I needed to. It saved me enough on storage to get rid of a storage locker and move it to be worth renting the big truck. Storage eats you up.
And I am stopping today in one of my favorite places to shop along the way, which is Boise, Idaho.
Okay,
so this is the front entrance to Antique World. This mall.
We're going to mute that guy, and I'm just going to talk about this now. Antique World is a really cool mall. It's next to a movie theater and a strip mall off of Overland Drive in Boise, and it is the largest antique center in southern Idaho and definitely the center of antiquing in southern Idaho from what I can tell because they have a lot of dealers, they have overflow area, and they really promote and they really help people. When you come in the door, this, for example, you'll see a bunch of sale signs. This is a once a month Thursday night sale. So I got to do some after hours shopping, which was really cool. And when you walk in the door, you immediately see nice things. This mall really is good about getting high-end merchandise. Look at all of this Lalique in the first cabinet. Some of these are R. Lalique pieces. If it's marked R. Lalique, that's before he died, which I believe was in the 1940s. And those pieces are a lot more valuable than the ones that just say Lalique. But Lalique has always been prized. They have a store on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. I mean, this is major stuff here. So to walk in and have that be the first thing you see is pretty auspicious. And they've got rows of showcases here. I'm going to see if we can pick out some things I didn't mention when I was here last time, but it's so fun to go to one of their sales because everybody you see the after 6 sale, that's the one that they have once a month. And for a couple of hours, they have discounts. Most of the dealers participate. And there's a bunch of Hollywood Regency, the Granada Gold, all of that stuff that was so popular as boudoir and dresser stuff in the 1960s that is definitely back with a vengeance. People are really enjoying these things again. And you see all sorts of things that were made in Italy. Italy was having a lot of financial problems and domestic terrorism in the early 1970s. So their currency fell in value, and all of a sudden, all sorts of wonderful handmade and hand-painted Italian ware became available. Next to it, you've got this guy with just a ton of Matchbox, old Tootsie toys, and then bigger trucks and vehicles. And I don't think you necessarily have to have been a little boy playing with these to appreciate them. I think anybody who likes classic iron, men or women, can appreciate. This is a bunch of cameras. This was before I had my big collection of cameras. I recognize a lot of these a lot better now that I've had a big collection to learn about. Let's see in here, Nancy Ann's Storybook dolls, $10 each. That's a good price. I was not paying attention to them. I was looking at safety razors. This was about the time I again had a collection of safety razors come to me. And when I get collections from consigners, a lot of times that's how I learn more, and you do a deeper dive because you get a whole bunch of things at once instead of just researching one item. You're getting an overview of the entire area. That's part of the reason I like to take consignments, is it stretches my knowledge. They've got some little regimental pins, nothing really significant there, but they do have some good military in this mall, which we'll see later. And of course, it's in the West, and turquoise jewelry is popular in the West. So you're going to see lots of rings, lots of Navajo pieces. Some of these are old enough to be old pawn, meaning that they were things that were trade goods. And that was a thing that was true really up until about the 1950s. Then you start to see it go away from the pawn trading and really be collectible, and they start having studio designs and people start signing their things more. So it's a different era. 329 on that big bracelet, but look how big and chunky that is. That is a big chunk of silver there. This is very pretty. You know, the jadeite green was so popular in the 1930s that they did stoves. This is one of the first electric stoves where you've got the little stove part on the left and the burners on the right. When we see these, they almost always still work. They were really well made. This is when people were starting to modernize appliances. And so I think that they were not yet made for obsolescence. Bunch of treasure craft barrel line. That's in my book there. The beer barrel, the water barrel, the coffee barrel. This is the line that really made them famous and made them a big kitchenware maker in the 1950s and 60s. The cookie jar was on the Dick Van Dyke Show. You see it on the partition between rooms if you ever watch that in reruns. Boise also really grew in the 60s and 70s, and so you see mid-century modern there. It's not a place that a lot of people would instinctively think, oh yeah, Boise is a place to get modernism, but it is, and I find an interesting piece or two every time I go. This dealer has a number of things, everything from glassware to that really cool filing cabinet, which has all the 70s colors, orange and harvest green and avocado, everything you could want. The office chair there, office chairs have really taken off. There's that filing desk. Office furniture in general is very popular now because people are working at home. And of course, this was filmed before the current situation, and so we were not anticipating that people would need those, or I would have probably bought that piece too. Neat lamps. These are 1950s or 60s. The fiberglass shades with the patterning on them are part of the big appeal of these. And those shades have value in and of themselves. So if you ever see a loose shade out there in good condition, pick it up because there is somebody looking for that to match a lamp that they have. You see a lot of old lamp bases without their shades. Here's a butcher block table. These continue to be popular. I just sold one in Kentucky a couple of months ago. And the more worn, the better. They really like them to seem as if they've had a lot of use. And this one has. This is a really old one here. I'd say probably 1910s with those little metal caps on the side. Here is a really beautiful thing that you rarely see. Now, Erector sets in general are not as popular as they used to be because the generations that played with them are pretty much in retirement years now, a lot of them. But they also had some that you could make trains out of, and the trains are beautiful and hard to find and expensive. This is a $3,000 set. And again, part of what's the pleasure to be going to this mall is that you're going to see really interesting things that you don't run into everywhere else. I have not seen one of these Rector sets or some of the big Lionel engines as well that they have here in ages in another mall. It's been years since I've seen very many specialists in that type of thing because most of it went into collections years ago, so it's not out there. And then here's a smaller gauge for the railroads. It's interesting to try to extend the life of Lionel. At one point, they decided they needed to get girls to play with trains, so they made a pink train, thinking that somehow it being pink would be the appeal. And those are very rare now. because girls didn't like them. There's a neat little dress form. And behind it, we have this really great scale on this space here. This looks like it was something that would have been in an industrial place, maybe a feed store or a farm store, someplace where they would have been doing, whoops, where'd we go here? Okay, we're going to skip on ahead, I guess. So now we are with Enid Collins. And Enid is very pretty in white, 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 white. This would have been from about 1968 when makeup, shoes, go-go boots, everything was white. It was a big fad for about 6 months in the 1968 period, and that purse would be from them. I like all this old primitive farm stuff. This is what we expect to see in Idaho, maybe a little more than some of the stuff that we have been seeing in this mall. Everything from ice tongs to old tins. And of course, people are decorating with these items now, particularly people living in the country. Although I see suburbanites doing this as well because it brings that farmhouse decor look, which is very popular still, into a more contemporary suburban setting. And a lot of people like that because, even though we may not want to do the work it takes to live out on a farm anymore, there is something really comforting about the hominess and the connection to nature and to a more basic way of living that appeals to people. So I think that's what part of that is about. Nice oak furniture here too. And then there was her hanging on this piece of this oak hall tree. There she is from the 50s. I fell in love with her immediately. I had to have her. I bought her. I took her to Florida. She lasted about 3 shows. Someone else fell in love with her, and she lives at his house now. Now, these folks do a lot of refinishing of furniture. This mahogany lamp table is very handsome, and mahogany is really good quality wood if it's solid, and it's not in as much demand right now. So if you like dark wood, this is a great time to be buying because the prices are way down. In these parts and in Oregon, I noticed this oak with the pith rays is still more popular. In Washington State, not as much, although in the more rural parts it is. So, again, even with furniture, there's a lot of regional variation in what people will buy. I thought this was a particularly handsome piece with the seat and the big wide rays tell us it's 1880s or 90s, back before they cut down all of those trees. This 1910s dresser, it's a dresser if it has a mirror, it's a chest of drawers if it doesn't. And then the oak filing cabinet. And again, if only we'd known that everybody was going to be wanting office furniture right now, this probably would have ended up in the car with me too, because it's a stacker, so it comes in different pieces. Those are nice to take to shows because you can take the different pieces and pack them full of stuff. I love this Art Deco. I seem to notice these scales anywhere I go. I have a thing for scales lately. I've got a bunch in my inventory, but nothing like this. These are really heavy, so not so much fun to move around. But if you have them in a store, they're just fantastic. They're about $400 or $500 typically. Now here's a nice Blanco piece, and it was priced about right because it is just a bowl, so I didn't buy it. But this color of orange is really great. And look in the bottom, you can see an acid mark. We're going to turn it over here and show you, I think, hopefully, while you look at a lot of crystal and whatever random things the camera caught. And here we go. Yes, there's the Blanco etch. They only did this etch from 1958 to 1961, and then in 62 they went back to the foil handshake label because they found that the bottoms of the pontals were too uneven for the etch to take. This is one of the rare ones where you see all 6 letters BLENKO. A lot of times you'll see an L or a K and you can't read the rest. So that's something to know because you may spot pieces, and the acid etch typically sell for just a little bit more because they were a shorter period of time. And also because that was when Wayne Husted was their designer. And Wayne is a great guy with a lot of interesting designs and probably the most famous of their designers. Now, I like little spaces like this where they take something and make it look kind of like you might have it in a home. A collector's home, of course, but a home because you might have a plate rail and show off your Franciscan ware and your Vernon and your English china. And then the rest of it is set up like a kitchen. So you've got cookie jars and you've got pitchers and you've got your shakers and you have your little movable cart for your utility use. And it's a neat way to display. And this dealer really has a lot of the fun old whimsical 1940s and 50s kitchenware. Most of these pieces are Shawnee out of Ohio. And you'll see the gold on the pig there on Smiley Pig. If it's gold, it was a factory second. Shawnee would actually send their seconds to a company in Ohio who would paint things with gold paint to cover up some of the blemishes. And funnily enough, the collectors like that better, so they actually pay more for the seconds now. And look at this guy with this great tongue hanging out. The tongue is actually the ladle. I love that. That's such a cute design. That's Japanese from the 30s. You can see why the Japanese whimsy really was so popular in the marketplace. Now for something a little more serious, here's a bunch of silver vitrue, and it is really, I just love old silver because there's so many patterns. There's ornate patterns, there's plain patterns. The plain paddles in the middle there are Georgian silver. Those are going to date back all the way to the early 1800s. And you can tell Georgian silver because it'll have a little mark with King George's head. It's a little tiny square on the back. And so if you're able to recognize that, then you'll be able to spot Georgian silver. These other pieces are turn of the last century pretty typically. And, you know, with silver prices up like they are, these are all about an ounce of silver each. I imagine a lot of these have actually sold since I was in this store because at current silver prices, a lot of these are just priced about their scrap value. And then jewelry. I did not realize when I went into this mall and filmed this that two lovely women, two sisters, they're twin sisters. They were both school teachers. They're very pretty gals with blonde hair, and they love jewelry. They collected for years, then they became dealers in jewelry because their collections outgrew them. And they moved to Boise, and it turns out this and some really incredible jewelry we're going to see soon belongs to them. And I ran into them in the mall after I had filmed this, and it was so neat to see them again. This dealer specializes in pocket knives and straight razors. One nice thing about being the big mall in a region where there aren't a lot of other choices is that you get the best dealers with the best stuff. And Boise doesn't really have, they had an antique show and then I think it kind of fizzled out, which is surprising because it's grown a lot there and there's over 500,000 people in the area now. And I suspect an antique show might do well there, but in the absence of that, and especially right now, a lot of places not having shows, your bigger antique malls, if they're well run and do a good job like this place does, that's where people are going to take their merchandise that they don't want to list online. There's a Hohner concertina. They made the accordions as well as the harmonicas. Snowshoes, because of course it does get cold in Idaho and they need snowshoes. And then here we've got a neat old copper still. I just got one of these in my inventory, and it's so fun to have one. It's been on my bucket list of things I'd like to own as a dealer. I have this crazy bucket list of someday when I'm a dealer, as a dealer, I want to own one of these once. And the still, well, that was part of it, and I'll tell you what, I'm very excited about it. So I checked that off, and now I'm just, my next bucket list item, I'm still looking for a surfboard to sell. Let's see what else we have here. Look at the cute prints with the boy and girl. They are so happy because they're all duded up in their Western. And then you've got End of the Trail. He is not so happy because he's reached the end of the trail, but that's a very famous print that you'll see a lot. And they do sell. Kachina dolls are popular. I usually get over 100 for anything in that size. And there are definitely collectors who look for particular artists. Most of them were made in the 70s and 80s, as opposed to these gloves, which are Plains Indian, and those have a fair bit of age. Those look more like they're mid 1900s. I thought this tea box was really pretty, and I'd forgotten about this, so it's interesting to see it again in the video here with the geisha and its dinner party, Japan tea. And then I like this little set. This is English, but what's neat about it is that you've got a little round table, but it separates and you can pull it apart. So if you needed little chairside tables, or if it's out on a patio, you have people over for cocktail hour and everybody wants to sit. Also, currently with people spending a little time distancing from each other, well, then you can actually pull these apart and everybody gets their own little table and you can sit your required 6 feet apart and still have friends over. Half off of everything in this space. That was pretty amazing. And I looked and they had really nice stuff. And at the half off, some of it was pretty buyable. But this was early in my trip and I was being kind of fussy. And I shouldn't have been because I really should have bought this Art Deco stand. I believe this was under $50 with the discount. This is a neat motion lamp. I love motion lamps. Niagara Falls is one we see more often. And then this guy with the tractors. And then next to it again, Boise was big in the 60s. There's that aluminum set. Here's the red phone. They've got these classic pieces from the era, toys from the era. You've got the old NFL lunchbox in the back there. I remember a lot of people having those when I was a kid. The 1930s Union Pacific train is cool. I obviously like toys, and they had a lot of good ones here. And then here are the little tabs that went with the original Hot Wheels, and those are collectible in and of their own right. A lot of times the car is long gone, but the cars originally came in a blister pack with that little metal tab, and nobody ever wore those tabs. It was just something to have with your car. A lot of them got separated, so you'll find the little tabs by themselves. Advertising, people don't realize that some of these shakers were done as advertising pieces. Again, this is Depression era and 1940s, and this was a way to give somebody something that would remind you of their store. And then, of course, because it's the middle of Idaho, we have Tiki Mugs and a nice little collection. I think there's some fun ones, and most of those are vintage. I didn't see any treasure crap, so I didn't have them open that case. Now here we get into some really beautiful things. I love mesh purses. The geometric in the middle, the Mandalian is really pretty. So is this one hanging. Just such a nice, sweet design there. Kind of a combination of Art Deco and Art Nouveau, but they were mainly used by the flappers in the 1920s and 30s because they wanted things that shook and shimmied like they did, and boy did they get it. Look at the orange and avocado. We think of those colors as being 1970s, but they were really popular in the 30s as well. So if you like those colors, you can mix your 30s and your 70s together and actually have a fun time collecting some things that will look good together that you might not think go together initially. Minerals dealer, they've got muscovite and aquamarine and neat little geodes. And here's a nice perfume atomizer and a lovely compact. This was a little key ring compact that you would actually hold on your thumb. And those are harder to find, especially with that enameling. And there's another nice mesh bag. That's a Whiting and Davis with the yellow on the blue. Great deep blue color. Now we're going to get into some really nice jewelry. Again, these are these twins that I told you about. They have some really wonderful jewelry and boudoir items. And here's another nice mesh purse. It's just so fun to see so much good stuff in a place like this. Quite unexpected for people who are from outside the area. They might not think that Idaho would be a place to find lovely evening bags, for example, but boy, do they have a fantastic selection. And now we're getting into some really serious jewelry. When I said things that you never see anywhere else, that Victorian pin with the two hand-painted babies, those were somebody's babies they had painted as a portrait. It's $1,500. It's gold, it's pearls, it's hand-painted, it's unique. I mean, there is not another one of those around. The one on the left is a pin for a redcoat who fought for the English army. That's from about 1820, and it's got his locks of hair around it, another unique piece. He was a dragoon officer in the 1770s, there it says, and that is priced at $2,000 because handmade, one-of-a-kind Georgian jewelry is one of a kind. I mean, these were not factory produced pieces. These are things that somebody had made, and that was it. And I love the seeing eye in the middle next to where my head is, right there. It is really cool. And that's another Victorian mourning pin. A lot of jewelry in the Victorian period was called mourning jewelry, partly because there was such a preoccupation between the Civil War in the United States and the death of King Albert in England on death. The Victorians were rather obsessed with it. Also, mortality was rather high back then, so it was a subject they unfortunately had a lot of familiarity with. There's another Georgian piece that's all hand formed. All of those links, all of those were done repoussé style, where they beat it into a mold, and that is a $4,500 piece. It's just phenomenal. And when you say, gee, who would ever pay those prices? Well, I had a piece of Georgian jewelry that I paid close to 2000 for, and I sold it in Idaho for almost 3000. So there is a customer. You have to step up for it, but you will find people who buy. Now here, this is factory made, but boy, is it a hard one to find. This is a Miriam Haskell. This is a bib. It's actually more of a collar because it goes all the way around. This would have been great with the short hairstyles in the 50s. What an amazing piece. Miriam Haskell is one of the most collected currently among the designer costume jewelry labels, and there's a reason. The workmanship is just so fine. uh, there's just so much good jewelry in this case. I almost can't get over it. And I showed some amazing jewelry in later videos in Palm Beach, Florida, but a lot of these pieces they didn't have. And that jewelry dealer in Palm Beach is one of the biggest jewelry dealers in the country. So this really is special stuff. If you get to anywhere in the vicinity of Boise and you like jewelry, you really do need to check this place out. Love this fruit salad set. Isn't that just fun? And then I like the colors in this um, particular one here that we're seeing, the reddish maroon tone. Stanley Hagler's another big name. Um, the French Bulldog pins, there is a dealer also in Palm Beach who brings these over from France, and I didn't get to see her this year because they can't come over, but next year hopefully things will be normal and we'll see them again. And then there's all sorts of jewelry here. The blue second to the left of these bracelets is a Juliana. You can tell by the way it's formed. A lot of these are good Kenneth J. Lane. Some of those later names that are very collectible now as well. My knowledge of costume jewelry is a little more old school, and actually there are a lot of designers out of the 80s and 90s that are starting to be sought after now as well. So it pays to do some scholarship on that. Love the checkbird picture. That big face and that deco is just so cool. And there's a really good tree topper from the 60s. Love the colors. This orange and jade green here, those were both, well, let's see where we went here. Let's try to get back on track. Okay, well, we're going to just skip right back to that. Okay, here we go. Let me find where we are. I apologize, but this is part of the fun with the flashback is you get to flashback again. Okay, we're back caught up. So there is a Victorian beaded whimsy, and here is a really large one. The nice thing with these is that these are really in good shape and intact. Now here we get into Militaria, and this is some really good stuff too that you rarely ever see because these are mostly Civil War infantry badges. And we don't see a lot of Civil War stuff. You don't even see that much in the South anymore because it's mostly gone in collections. So to see this collection in Idaho was another neat surprise. U.S. Marine socket base and spire for a helmet there in the gold. You've got Confederate belt buckles. And then we get into some 20th century things. And some of these are medals for awards for service that are a little more unusual. Just about everybody got a good conduct medal and a national service medal after World War II. There are a lot of people who served in Vietnam and Korea. We see a lot of those. But some of those medals are for really specific things like Antarctic service that very few people did. And those are where the value goes up. Bayonets, a lot of those. And here I am in front of a really neat coverlet. I love that thing. Look at the bird and the colors, and it's just a great style. I I just love coverlets, and that's another thing that sells well in Idaho. So Idaho really is a great place to go shopping. It is a pleasant surprise. I enjoy it every time I go there, and I can't wait to go back, to tell you the truth. Okay, let's let this guy do his thing.
Please click the subscribe button below.
Yeah, let's
Click the
actually
bell
not
to
let
be
him do that
notified.
because you're going to get to hear that in a minute anyway. We'll just go to the next camera. And I will say that Boise, Idaho is an absolute must. Also in Idaho, Coeur d'Alene has a lot of antique shops in the northern part of the state. So whichever way you go through Idaho, if you're driving in that state, you are going to hit some good antique centers. And it's a great, it's really like an oasis because there's a lot of very dry, very uninteresting driving between northern Utah and southern Idaho. But when you get to Boise, here's this oasis and a wonderful antique mall awaits. So if you get there, say hi for me. I'm George the Antique Nomad. Thank you for coming with me on this flashback, and we will see you again soon. Bye bye now. Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below, click the bell to be notified when new videos upload, leave a comment below, and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.